learned a bit through my own experience and making a few mistakes and seeing others make mistakes and seeing other successes and going, right, I'm going to learn from that. Kelly, you had a success. Shouldn't be ashamed of it. Should be really super proud of it, because we can learn from your success. It's not just that we go, oh, Kelly's got a win. We go, what? How did Kelly get a win? And we get into it that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through what have I learned through this journey and what's the important stuff and why have I invested in an IP company? Why are these things so important to me? Why am I so messianic about this? Why do I want to spread the word? Because I believe if you can get this right, you can really add value. And if you get it wrong, it's dangerous. And I'll explain that through case study and personal experience. Here's another great one, okay? Another useful quote. Two quotes from two ladies straight out of the back, right? Why do I do this? Why do I think Ollie and the team are doing something fantastic? We are this small group of thoughtful, committed citizens. And through what we do in our own special ways, we change the world, right? Don't forget that. You are not some corporate drone who just goes into the office. We do this because we derive enormous value from it personally, as a group, and ideally financially. But we are this group of small citizens, and this is why I'm so passionate about helping us through sharing what I've understood and what I've learned, because it's so powerful in terms of you turning your ideas into value. So I'm doing this as a kind of lesson thing, but you see, lesson, top tip, whatever you wish, I don't mind. I just want to make sure I headline it. The first important headline, you knew this, right? Your ideas, and they're your personal ideas, are incredibly valuable. I'll explain that in due course, but they are also incredibly vulnerable. And the more valuable your ideas become, the more valuable they are to attack. Hey, Johnny. And so this is why IP exists. This is why intellectual property rights exist, because your ideas have extraordinary value, but to attackers and the ne'er-do-wells and the corporate man, right? And I'll go through that, I'll give a clear anecdote of that in a second. They are vulnerable to attack. So lesson two, almost, then this, we're going to come back to this theme again and again and again, okay? And I don't make any apologies for it, because this is my killer insight from a decade of doing this, which is ideas times rights equals value, okay? And I'm a mathematician, I'm a maths nerd by training, right? All right, anybody, if you can, just a show of hands, right? Do you know what any number times zero is? Any number times zero, right? Big fat zero, right? So you could have the best idea in the world, and if you don't have any rights, and by rights I mean the ability to control it and prevent other people getting their hands on it, you have no value. And you might say, no, Paul, I've got value. I'm generating sales. I'm generating that. Okay, let's clarify that. You have no sustainable value. You have no value to trade, to sell, to invest in. If you don't have rights, you are uninvestable, because you're just vapor. You're an idea on a stick, right? If you have rights, your ideas become extraordinarily valuable because you control them. And that control generates monopolies. And we all know what monopolies give you. They give you market power, the ability to charge high margin, the ability to generate profit and generate an annuity. And annuities, profitable growing annuities are worth an enormous amount of cash because they give security of return. Ideas times rights equals value. No ideas, no value. Any number times zero is zero. So I'm quite passionate about this. So I've sat through a lot of presentations and it goes, oh, come on, where's the meat, right? So the meat is we're going to go through these 5 questions. Why, what, how, where, when. So why do you do this? And why is it so important now? And it's way more important now than it was before, okay? I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but I think it's as soon as you blink and look at it, you go, yeah, shit, we're in an incredibly volatile world, right? And by that, I mean, it's not just a volatile market in the UK. We now work in a global economy with global competition, global e-commerce. You can be ripped off from the other side of the moon these days. Or you can sell to the other side of the moon because brands have now global presence. Ideas have global presence. The gains are far greater because we live in a global market, but the losses and the threats are equally huge. So that should be clear, okay? It's a call to action. Now, why are they valuable now, especially, okay? You've got, with the boom of technology, the ability to access markets at almost zero barriers to entry through the internet. The value of ideas and their reach is greater than it has ever been, okay? The transformational technology, the value of technology, as I've said, in terms of bringing down transactional costs, increasing access to markets, increased social media, Kelly, getting your brand out there through social media and influencing, the explosion of communication has just created enormous opportunities to create value. But you only secure that value if you have rights to control your idea. I'll say that again. Okay. Every business in the history of the world, every organization since Machiavelli, who's the guy on the bottom left there, took ideas and created value from them. A business is just a vehicle to turn ideas into value. That's it. You can dress it up whatever way you like. You can put a factory on it. You can put an oil platform on it. You can put a branded pair of knickers around it. Sorry, Kelly, that's out of respect, all right? I've got a huge amount of respect for that and love for it, okay? It's an idea that you have created a business around to deliver value. Now, I'm not going to go through all these people. I'm just saying you're part of a long tribe of people stretching back to the Florentine Renaissance, where people started to put capital at risk to generate return, okay? My business, by the way, TMOA, started in 1886, and it sits between Andrew Carnegie, the guy who basically gathered together a ton of IP concerning how to make steel, which is where he made his money, and Rockefeller, J.D. Rockefeller, who's the guy underneath him with the Tash, who didn't have any ideas himself. He was the guy from Standard Oil who basically just crushed every entrepreneur he could find until he had 90% of the market in the US. He's what you call a robber baron. And that's the devil in this for us, because he exploited the fact that successful entrepreneurs didn't have control of their ideas. He is the man. He is the corporate man who we all have to protect ourselves from. So what about these guys? Okay. Fantastically recognized brands, right? All of them were just one step from failure at one point. They were all just one step from being foreclosed, shut down, thrown out on the street. And they would have lost all the value in their brand or in their idea. All of them. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but I've researched it. They all were one step away. So with value comes enormous vulnerability and predatory action. And if it's true for Apple and Colt, and I'll show you a family example, right? Okay, actually, before we go into that, big question for the chat, okay? Stick your answers in a chat and I'll be really interested. You know what you're creating value for your business, right? And you might be creating social value, you might be creating personal value in terms of lifestyle, but let's just dumb it down to pounds, shillings, and pence, right? In terms of the value of your business now or in future, give me a percentage. Give me how big a part of the cake is that value dependent on your intellectual property? Right, just give me a number, right? Or just hold up your fingers. If that's 100, right? Just go, okay, I only think it's 10%, or it's 20%, or 30%, or 80%, or 90%, or 100%, right? Just hold it up like that. So at the count of 5, 3, 2, 1, put your hands up, fingers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We've got a 70%, we've got a 90%, we've got a 70%, we've got a 90%. You guys, you know, most people don't get anywhere near because maybe you just glimpsed this chart. I don't know. You're spot on, right? This is a real stat. And you can go back in history as to why this is the case, because back in the 70s, businesses were based around factories, okay? Now, as we go through to this decade, 10 to 20% of the business's value is based on their physical assets, okay? Everything else is based on expectations of the future, which is all about how you leverage your market position, your intellectual property, your monopoly, which you control because you have control of your brand, your patent, your design, okay? So IP is extraordinarily valuable and getting more valuable by the year. Okay, people go, oh, no, that's just because it's that's the Apple and Facebook and that, right? This is the personal example I was going to tell you about, okay? It's my family business. This is my dad's business that he built up in 1991. I was in corporate land doing my corporate stuff, which I gave up, by the way, back in 2010. And he grew this business from nothing, from quite literally the living room table with my mum, okay, in 1991 and then my brother joined in 92, and they grew a business to 5 million quid. And had equity been back, had the investment markets and PE and all that stuff been available back then, like it is to us now, they'd have just had a zero, because they created a fantastic brand and a fantastic niche in high-level disinfectant, okay? They got to 5 million, and exactly what I said to Kelly earlier on, as soon as you have value, you are vulnerable, and the more value you create, the more vulnerable you are to attack. They were subject to a hostile takeover. So it was a hostile takeover. They tried to take out, and they did it based on a tiny little legal chink in their brand armory, okay? They basically annexed all the brands. And with all the brands meant all of their distribution agreements, all of their regulatory agreements went. And you see the top there, they went from 5 million to 1 million, 80%. And this is a family business. This isn't Facebook. This is a family business like any other in the UK. That's the value of brand. That's the value of intellectual property, of your customer book, of your designs, of your ideas, of your copyright materials, of all of that stuff. They wiped it from the face of the earth because they put a legal embargo around it. Because I'm a tenacious SOB, we fought back. And I used all of the financial black magic that I can bring to bear, and we turned the business around. We created a new one, and we made it 5 million quid again, and then we sold it to these guys' biggest competitor, because my dad was exhausted. You don't go on that journey without wanting to take a break at the end of it, okay? And in order to execute and realize full value for that business and not be chipped on price, we had to make damn sure that every element of that 100% of value, the 80% that was dependent on the IP, was absolutely bomb-proof. Otherwise, the man comes and chips you on price, and what you thought was 5 million suddenly becomes 3. Value and vulnerability. Favorite work, I just not going to run on that. That's my dad. That's the day we sold. Well, that's the way he got away. And then he's holding a picture of him back in 1991. We sold where that green arrow is on the 1st of September 2018. And then we got shares in 2019, etc., etc. Then COVID happened. You can imagine he's a happy bunny. Okay, because we were able to secure and use the market and the greed in the market for it to serve us, not be servants of it. So I'm not going to dwell on this. How do you create value from your ideas? Because every business does it. And if you can unpack, what is my business model? What is my strategy? What is the role of my ideas in that? You then understand what your unique, what your secret sauce is. Yeah. Ponder it. And come back to these slides again and think of it again and scribble on them. That's what they're there for. So why? We're clear on why. What ideas can create value, right? Generally, we break them out into 6 areas: inventions, brands, designs, creative works, your internet presence, more and more so ever, trade secrets, okay? Then we're going to go through how. And if you just think, okay, what you could say in terms of trade secrets, that's a huge amount, right? In terms of the stuff I need to do what I need to do, okay? Your customer book, your know-how, your local work instructions, the contracts you have with suppliers, the contracts you have with X, Y, and Z, the regulatory approvals you have. All of this stuff is intellectual property. It's not physical. And it's subject to, and it is vulnerable either to cyber attack or to legal attack or to commercial ripoff. So next question, what is your most valuable IP asset? First thing, how do you value an IP asset, right? Really simple. Everyone knows about the Emperor's New Clothes, right? The story we're told when we were kids, yeah? There's this hoity-toity guy walking down the street, naked as the day he was born, but everyone says, aren't his clothes beautiful, right? So you value your business clothed with all of its IP on it, your brands, your know-how, your client book, all the stuff that's in your head, and you just replace everything with vanilla, okay? Vanilla salespeople, vanilla marketing people, vanilla you, right? Maybe we keep you, right? But we've got no brands, no nothing, no patents, no ideas, no copyright, no code. You're naked in terms of a business. Value yourself now. And the value of your IP is the value of your clothes. It's the difference between you fully clothed and you naked. That's the value of your IP, which is why you all said 90%. Because you understand this, because you're entrepreneurs. And again, I'm going through this at a breakneck speed so we can ask questions at the end, okay? Ollie, I hope I'm doing this all right. Put your hand up in there.
Are there any questions so far, Bob?
You're just bamboozled, right? Right, so, but I'll also, this is the one-stop thing. As I stuck in the chat on Wednesday, I do pro bono Friday. You can call me or pick me up. You got my email. Just say, look, I need to know. Help me, right? Or what did you do in this situation? Or I can help you, Paul. Why don't you do this and this and this? We're a team. We're a tribe. We help each other. How? Okay. So we talked about ideas and we had to think about your clothes, right? How do you create rights? And what we mean by rights, let's just make it really simple. Control, right? An idea where you don't have control will be ripped off, right? Chaps from before, Gutenberg, inventor of the printing press, didn't control his idea, ripped off, taken off him. James Watt, his previous collaborator, I can't remember the guy's name because he's disappeared into the mist of time, ripped off, lost his ideas, right? Control and rights is the difference between being somebody who has a fantastic idea and somebody who's a gazillionaire. And the man will take the people with the ideas, recruit them, suck their brain out and spit them out the other side. So how do you keep control? And this point about Ollie saying, Ollie said, people tell me I can't, there's no IP in my business because it's tech. Holy crap, your entire business is IP. It has to be protected, right? How do you protect tech? I won't go into detail right now, but you can and you must. It's around copyright, it's around design right, it's about database registration, it's about taking the security extremely seriously, but you can protect code. You can protect tech. How do you think Facebook makes gazillions? How do you think these, the flash traders in the city, Goldman's, right? When there was anybody read Flash Boys by Michael Lewis? Basically, it's computer-driven trading at extremely high speeds with very sophisticated algorithms. They put this guy in prison for allegedly taking their code. So yes, you can protect code. And code now is incredibly valuable. It's technology and brand together are a intoxicating combination. So patents, we know about that. Actually, patents take a long time to register. They're very expensive. Basically, my advice to us at this stage in our journey, if you're early stage, is start out getting protection to register, then defer registration by doing what's called a European patent application, or deferring to do a global patent application. It buys you another 18 months of runway where you don't have to spend tens of thousands of pounds. And that could be the time when you sell, or when you sell part of it, or when you license the technology. And so options create value. IP options create extraordinary value. To create a minimum of protection, start a process. That way you have an option to defend it. The later you start a process, the worse your position becomes, because you are progressively eroded by time. Patents, trademarks, brands, visual identity. Johnny's on the call. He was on the call a minute ago. What he doesn't know about brands is like, I've forgotten more, whatever, you know what I mean? He's had more brands than I've had hot dinners. He is a brand guru, and he captured a seminar which I've shared with the guys that he did with us about how to create, manage, and maximize the value of your brand. I'll make that available to this group. We've cut it into 2-minute versions. Okay, we all know the power of trademarks, and what I want you to think about is a checkerboard. Okay, can you visualize a checkerboard with those 8x8 grids? Okay, a brand or any patent right or any intellectual property right is about having a square on that grid. Okay. On the top side, you have on the right, the ranks down the ranks across, you have the cases where you can apply that use, okay, where you can protect it. If I set up Facebook as a shoe seller or a seller of deck chairs, I could do. They'd probably kick off because they probably registered it in every market in the world, but it's a completely different mark to its application. We had one with Boss Brewing recently where they registered Boss in brewing, and Hugo Boss tried to chuck them off their turf because we owned that brand, and you don't own it in brewing, and we successfully defended their position. Okay, so think about those applications as those ranks. Okay, retail, sales, technology, marketing materials, spoken word, all this stuff, blah, 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 right? There's 48. And then think of the files as countries, territories, right? So what people do is, I've registered my brand in UK under one class. It's pretty much next to useless because you haven't registered in all the classes where you're going to use that brand or other people could use it. There's generally 5 classes. We recommend a minimum of 5, right, to give you coverage. And it's not that big an incremental deal, but it gives you coverage. It's got that breadth on the checkerboard. And then in terms of width, UK, Europe, and there's other pieces to efficiently get you in other markets. And what you think about is, where am I now? And this is one for you. Again, Kelly, I'm picking on you a lot, but I love the success story, and I love it's knickers. Now, what's not to love, right? You want to grow into, you want eventually to go into Japan or into the US or whatever with your brand, but you go, I'm not ready to do it yet. I don't want to spend the money. If you're doing a raise, they'll say, what rights have you protected? And we go, well, we've protected in we've protected in Brazil. Why? You're not in Brazil yet? No. We have a growth plan to go into Brazil in 2 years. So we protected the right now. We have an option to grow. We have an option. This is why Facebook took out Meta in all of these different classes in all these different regions that they're not interested in going into now, but they have an option to go into in due course. Options and IP options especially immediately secure the ability to deliver extraordinary value. Options secure incredible value. That's me speaking as a finance guy. And so the more options you have on that checkerboard, the more value you can create. We work with a very famous hotel company with Yo in the front of it. They're looking to grow into certain markets. And what do? Before they even register plans for a hotel, 2 years before they register the mark, and they turf off anybody who's sitting on the mark, who's cyber squatting, okay, or trademark squatting, because they've got prior art. we chucked off, somebody chucked off, we asked them delicately to remove themselves from our Instagram handle because we owned the IP. And so we could then say, sorry, chum, we've got prior rights to that. And people say, oh no, you can't own an internet a WhatsApp handle or a Twitter handle. Yes, you can. It's yours. You've registered the IP, you've registered the mark, you have prior art, you can boot them off. There is value in tech. There's value all over tech. It's just people don't think you can. And that's part of my messianic, just standing on any soapbox I can to tell people about this, because if as long as they can continue under that unknowing, unwitting belief, they are subject to being knocked off. So we talked about trademark, registered designs. That's like tip 6. It's easier to secure a registered design protection than it is a patent. And if it amounts to the same thing, which all you want is a monopoly in a market, go for the easier route whilst you go for the higher route. Do both, or just do one if you only have a certain amount of money. But you say, yes, so that bottle over there, right? Registered design, we registered design, we're doing an ongoing patent. And the biggest thing about registered designs is, think of, now you'll see this everywhere you look, right? When you look at the rear of a car and the mini headlamps at the back, right? You can't trademark those. You know, that distinctive Union Jack thing. It's not a trademark. It's not a patent. There's no innovation there. There's no brand there. It's a unique design. And so they've secured their identity in that physical embodiment of their idea. And so you think, well, what other designs could I have in terms of what I do? And could I register? Even if you think, oh, I'm not too sure, it's worth having a go. Because if you are successful, or if somebody comes along and says, actually, I'm looking to do a raise so I can really grow my business, and they can say, what IP have you got? You can say, well, I've registered that design, it's going through approval, blah, blah, blah. I'm approaching a patent, I'm deferring to do a European patent application for 18 months, but the papers are with the EU IPO, and we're going through consultation. Oh, what's that going to mean? Well, in 18 months' time, we'll know what to do, and we'll probably have to spend £10,000 to £15,000. This is why we're looking for investment, by the way. And they go, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, you've got your rights, you've got your options, you're secure, you're safe. It gives you the ability to be credible and make a credible ask to the community. Domain registration, I went through that in a bit. The big picture here is, before you register a mark, make sure that you've checked out all of the domains and all the areas you're going to use that mark. And sure, people might have positions there, but if you've already got the mark, you can move them on. Okay, so them having your much loved Twitter handle, right, is not the end of the world, but you've got to have some proof of registration first. Okay, but then you make sure all of it lines up, and you've got a branding and marketing is all about consistency of message. So your consistency spills over into domain registration and the world of e-commerce. Okay, where do you think, where is the greatest risk in terms of, is it brand infringement or is it passing off? Left hand, brand infringement, right hand, passing off. And passing off is somebody pretending to be you and trading as if they were you with your goods. Commonly, another example of that is counterfeit goods, or just people having the same brand name as you and selling a different product, but in a related market. So we got, let's put our hands up. Infringement, first of all, is over here, right? And then passing off is over here. Where do you think the biggest threat comes from? Hands up.
Passing off.
Pick one. That's passing off. That's infringement. Passing off by an order of magnitude, right? And so, yes, you have to have, infringement is about, I am going to infringe you, Wendy, because I'm going to register the same trademark as you in the UK IPO. What's your trademark, by the way, Wendy? You come off mute. What's your brand?
It's called First Idea. And
First Idea, right? So I'm going to register Second Idea, right? or first ideas, even better, right? And I'm going to do that on the, so I'm trying to share again. Okay, so if you've got that mark, you can protect it and you can boot me off, okay? If I then go and register at the IPO, I'm infringing you. It costs me money to infringe, and you get alerted, and we can tell you, oh, we have a service where we can watch your IP and alert you as soon as you've been infringed, so you don't have to, because that's a very tedious job for an entrepreneur. Actually, though, if I didn't register at all and I just set up firstidea.com or firstidea.co.uk or firstidea.idea and then started blithely going ahead without registering any IP, I'm passing off. I'm ripping you off, and there's no protection in your IP registration for that, other than well, there is. Sorry, you won't be alerted to it because you haven't registered into the IPO. And we get this with a client who does car polish, right? Really big. They're in all of the retailers, and they have a very clear brand. And another business started up selling the same product, a floor polish with the same brand that they hadn't registered, and they're saying, look, what the hell's going on? They're passing off. They said, well, they haven't registered their right. So how do you protect me? Well, we protect you now. Most businesses don't. We protect you now because we do an internet search of all of the various brand uses on eBay, Amazon, all these other places on e-commerce, so that we can spot when somebody's passing off and we can send them a cease and desist. IP, look, the reason why I got into this was I was being totally underserved by my IP attorney. Not because they were willfully negligent, it's just the market had moved on. They weren't protecting people from passing off on the internet. You can be protected. And so we can deliver, well, those services have to exist for our tribe. Final piece, non-disclosure and secure. This is basically security of your content. We've done another webinar with a guy called Andrew Rowan of Plexel that I'll also make available to Ollie. And he goes through the incredible value of non-disclosure when going out, when you're courting investors. The temptation will be, and he's the MD of this technology incubator. He's seen it more times than he cares to mention. More than 25%, getting up to 50% of startups, scale-ups share too much of their IP with corporates. In the lust for getting the sale, the corporate then does what a corporate does. It squeezes, not deliberately, it's just in their DNA, right? They're not malicious, they just are driven by this because they have battalions of people to do this and they can't help themselves. They just stripped all the IP out of the venture and then said, thanks, goodbye, we don't need you anymore. It's what they do, right? So they're like leeches. And so you have to make sure that you're not oversharing. It's like being in a relationship and going out with people. You can't be too into somebody. You've got to hold back until they put a ring on it, metaphorically, and say, yeah, sure. Are you going to give me a letter of intent? In which case, I'm happy to open up. So non-disclosure, particularly of IP, is freaking essential. And in your best endeavors to go out there and build market and build awareness, build pitches, do this, you can overshare. You will actually overshare. It's like human nature. And you almost have to stop yourself going, okay, this is the boundary here. And also, it creates a buying opportunity for the investor. Yes, I'm going to give you a letter of intent. Yes, I'm going to give you a commitment based on you sharing a bit more with me. It's a trigger. And if you're clever, you can use it to your advantage because they want to secure the right to use your ideas because they're frightened. Greed, uncertainty, doubt will get in their heads and they don't want you to go somewhere else. So hopefully now you have an idea that yes, all of this IP, all of your clothes are protectable. There isn't an item of your clothing that isn't protectable, that you cannot control. There's not an ounce of value that you can't put some level of defense or control around it. And as soon as you put that control around it, you're positioning yourselves not just to minimize vulnerability, but maximize value. Because as soon as you do this, you can license it, you can franchise it. And there was questions about licensing and franchising on our call just either this week or last week. You can use other people's energy to get your brand out there, to build your brand. And in fact, that's my parents' biggest learning, right? They didn't control a brand. And so for 20 years, what they were doing was building a brand that was owned, that they part owned, that then the other owner took out. Build value in what you control and control the sources of value. And then share that control with other people in a measured, controlled fashion, so that you can, one of the big things that came up about franchising last week was make sure you know how to exit a bad franchisee or licensee. You do not want to be stuck in a boat with a terrorist. You have to have control. It's your idea. You have to be able to throw them off the boat. That's how you protect IP. Rather than going into all the different things that in terms of the mechanisms legally, I wanted to say it's possible. Look through the keyhole. We can tell you more, but that's not for today, 1.5 hours. So where? Big one, huge one. This is the second. If there's one other thing to do about ideas times right times right, where do you put this stuff? Because I also specialize in business recovery, corporate restructuring, and this kind of stuff, right? Before we go to where, what happens? So we know there's risk in being an entrepreneur, right? We welcome that. And actually, there's no failure in being an entrepreneur. There is just learning. And the other thing to know is that businesses do not fail. Companies fail. The legal entity, the legal person that is the company, that is the vehicle through which you turn your idea into value, can fail. It can be subject to COVID, trade restrictions, single person getting ill, your supplier being hit by a meteorite. Shit happens to entrepreneurs over which they have no control. It's not their fault. They end up in a ditch. Kind of like my parents, but basically, had they have done this, they wouldn't have had a problem, right? So you have to protect yourself, not just from the trading risk, but not just from the risks you know, but the risks of trading, okay? If your company goes down, where do your ideas go? They go to an insolvency practitioner. And then where do they go? They go to the highest bidder, right? Your clothes, your beautiful, what is it, Gabuchon shoes with the red soles underneath. I've got 2 girls. I'm starting
Louboutin.
Hey?
Louboutin.
Louboutin, right?
I'm wearing a pair of their heels at the moment.
Yeah, they're very difficult to get in a large man's size, actually. I found that. They're quite pinchy.
I'm size 11, Paul, so they're very difficult.
Right, so all of your beautiful clothes, all your designer outfits, or the jacket you bought from when Elvis was doing his residency in Las Vegas, right? All of that stuff goes to the insolvency practitioner, and then you know that person that you shouldn't hate anybody, right? You shouldn't, but you should be compassionate and forgiving. But there are certain people who just rub you up the wrong way, okay? Maybe they're a corporate terrorist, right? Maybe they just gleefully like destroying entrepreneurial businesses. Well, corporate terrorist called Bobby comes along and he goes, I'm going to buy all your wardrobe and then I'm going to pretend to be you. Yeah? I'm going to pretend to be first idea in the market and I'm going to go and present all of this stuff, but I'm going to rip all your clients off. I'm going to take all your wonderful value and all your goodwill and all your purpose, and I'm going to turn it to my advantage and I'm going to poison it, right? I'm painting a picture. Maybe reality isn't this vivid, but this is what happened to my mum and dad's business, right? They were going to rip it off and then basically water down the product metaphorically and literally and overcharge the clients, overcharge the community they were selling to, which is veterinaries and animal welfare businesses or trusts. And they were going to just exploit their market position, let's put it that way. Because they could have, because all the stuff is owned by the IP. How do you stop that? Simple. Once you've got all your clothes, right, you stick them in a secure wardrobe, right? This dotted line, below the dotted line, trading risk exists. Above the dotted line, no risk. You have insulated all of your ideas from the market by putting them in a separate company that isn't subject to trading risk. The only business that company trades in is with trading companies that you own. Had my parents done this, no problem. Had any business done, I've done this in terms of restructuring TMOA and doing all this stuff. The business continued beautifully. The company, which was subject to being milked like a cash cow for 5 years by an exploitative absentee bunch of landlords, was knackered because it had built up ridiculous debt and a pension deficit to be ashamed of, which I recovered and rationalized. And the reason why we were able to, the brand continued and the business continued was the business continues. It's not like your customers immediately disappear when you're in difficulty. They don't. They want to continue trading with you. What disappears is your ability to use your IP. But if your IP is up top, next day you use it. Or throughout this period, there's a handover from one to t'other. Because Trading Co 1 and Trading Co 2 are just licensees of your IP. They're franchisees or licensees, and you can turn off the franchise and license agreement subject to certain financial covenants. And it gives you control of your trading entities. So it's not just a way of insulating IP and protecting it so that it's never going to fall in the hands of some corporate bastard, right? Or your worst enemy who lives just down the street from you, who's been wanting your idea forever. No, it doesn't happen. You constantly keep control, not just of the rights you have, but the meta right, what I call the meta right of the rights to own the rights, because they're up top. And then you license them back down. And the most important thing to do, to think about in this is, we're going to go on to when in a second, right? Before you take out an all asset debenture or any form of investment where you're seeding equity in your trading company and the IP sits in your trading company, do this. Because an all asset debenture is exactly what it says on the tin. It establishes control over all of the assets in the business, and the bank will not let you do this. Because it knows what you're doing. You're hiving out valuable assets up top that it no longer has control over outside its ring fence. Why would it let you do that? But normally banks are, if they go, okay, have you got an all asset venture over that business? Yes, I do. And they just think about the balance sheet. They think about tangible fixed assets, and they don't think about the IP. And also this mechanism enables you to aggregate the cost of the IP in the holding company and then license it back down.
Paul, the banks are recognising intangible assets now, and they're doing asset-backed finance against intangibles, things like IP, things like software.
Yeah.
So that's changing.
It's changing, because I've looked into this a lot, Ollie. I've looked into this a lot, and the reason I'll explain, it's a really good handover you give me there, right? Small businesses like ours, so they do it where it's worth the cost of doing the due diligence. There are businesses who do this, and I've been working with a couple, and they'll do it if the raise is about 300,000, and where the IP already exists, right? You might know others where they do a lower, but the ones I've spoken to, it's a material sum, and you're not in scale up, you're not in startup scale up. You're probably you've already got your investment. It's a form of investment that the PE investors and the funds like, because they don't seed equity. That's where it's come from. So it's a later stage vehicle, but it does exist. But it only exists if you are certain level of maturity. Right? Most banks don't. And I know because I've gone out to banks and said, look, I want to set up IP holding my business, which is going to give IP to the masses. I've said I want to take a loan out so that I can then fund other people's IP on subscription. Right? The idea of paying up for IP upfront in one lump sum doesn't serve our tribe, because cash is king.
Yeah.
You can pay for IP. It's the only thing it's the only asset you now pay for where you have to pay for it 100% up front. I buy a fridge and I put it on tick, right? IP, why can't you buy an asset like that you're going to use for 10 years on monthly subscription? You can do it with a phone, right? The market hasn't got wise to it because you cannot put security around an intangible, massively differentiated asset because the market for it is unclear. So the banks don't do it. So there's an inefficiency in the market, which I will fill. I am going to offer IP on subscription where you buy your IP and can invest in those marks on that checkerboard today, not in 24 months when you can afford a lump sum. And that means you can get protected as soon as you want, not as soon as you can pay the market, which is tipped against you because it's in the advantage of the attorneys, not the entrepreneur. Sorry, that's an aside. This is not.
That's right, Paul. We've got to wrap up in a minute, but if you get.
So I'm going to do when now, right?
Yeah.
And this is something you need to look at. These are the 7 or 8 stages of product, right? You go, okay, you move from idea to everything, right? And then you've got funding underneath that. And then I'm giving you advice about the IP you should be taking out. And all the time, what you're doing is you're expanding that checkerboard. Every quarter, you're reviewing it and you're building out. IP is not something you do once. You do not create value once. You create value every day, and you grow your business from friends and family to startup to scale up to up into different markets, into different products. And your IP strategy should be changing and evolving half yearly, quarterly. As your strategy changes, your IP portfolio has to change. Because if it doesn't, you're leaving gaps and issues to be exploited by somebody, and you're creating value which is impermanent. You're timesing your idea by a 0 in new markets. So you've got to create new rights and new control as you grow. And this is a kind of idea about what you do when. And you'll see that I've come to tip 10. That's it. As 10 ideas shared with you with a passion and conviction that comes from somebody who's in the tribe. Were my attorney here, he'd be backing me up. He's the brains. He's got the 25 years of experience. I've got the passion for it. He's the guy who will then take the conversation forward with me, if you want help. Final one, you're going to share all these slides, is, of course, this, but the one thing I wanted to get to, ideas, rights, value, just have it tattooed in your head. We've got those. This is it, right? The bottom one is, I've shared with you my link. I'm available pretty much every Friday. I do this because I love it. I do this because I'm able to do it. I do Pro Bono Friday. If you want to meet and catch up and have a chat, just share fellow travelers' tales, or say, Paul, actually, I've got a product that you might find really useful. Freaking brilliant. That's what I do this for. I do it because I'm part of a tribe of people who want to make the world a better place. And then also, if you want to get into a portfolio review and talk to James and me about the detail of the strategy you're going to adopt and what needs to happen in order for you to minimize vulnerability and maximize value from your ideas, it's a link there. It's just, we want to help. So that's me. I just love the opportunity to do this. Ollie, thank you very much. Back to you, mate.